Fall is all about cozy comforts, and with Hero Bread, you can enjoy all your favorites and still hit your health goals. From breakfast bagels and meal prepped enchiladas to mouth-watering burgers and cheesy noodles. You won't believe Hero Bread's options have 0 to 5 grams net carbs and are high fiber from the taste and texture. And right now, Hero Bread is offering 10% off your order. Go to hero.co and use code FALL25 at checkout. That's FALL25 at HERO.co. All figures are per serving of Hero Bread. Contains 2 to 18 grams of fat per serving. See the product nutrition panels on hero.co for more information.
All right, so this week I'm with Andy Green. Some of you may know him as Anders Red, one-time blogger, now on Twitter. Andy, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Good week.
Yes, good on the pitch.
Good on the pitch.
Good on the pitch. We are recording on Saturday before the EFL Cup final, for the record. So we can't comment on United 3, Newcastle 0. I do find it funny how if you talk about Newcastle United as Newcastle, they get really offended.
So they won United. We all know that. I was thinking back to the '99 Cup final. Actually, I was there for that day as well. That was a fun day. Yeah. It was almost like a sort of let's get this middle bit out of the way. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Fergie played the second string, or at least
that's right.
Rested a couple of players. Yeah, at Newcastle's last Cup final, that one. Their last trophy being the Fairs Cup. Remember that one?
Yep.
In 1969.
Yeah, that's too just before my time.
Yeah. Anyway, so we were going to talk about the finances a little bit around surrounding the takeover. Obviously, I don't think either of us particularly has an inside track on what Jim is thinking or the Qatari regime. And any links to the Al Thani family?
No. He's risen without a trace, and I've never heard of him before, like most people, I think.
Well, yes, it is interesting how a middle manager at a bank who now somehow found himself as chairman of a national state bank suddenly has $6 billion in his back pocket. It is impressive, I'd have to say. Maybe been saving for a long time, putting the pennies away.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, I thought we would get Andy on to talk about the finances because there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about how this process works. And Andy has been in the private equity market for some time. You couldn't get a better expert.
Very, very kind. Yes.
I do my best as an amateur, just doing corp VC, so the junior party to private equity. So let's talk about how this works. We're at the process now where we've had what is being labelled the soft bids come in, and I presume, although I don't know if it's been confirmed by anybody, that the parties, whoever's bid, now has access to the data room and are starting the due diligence process.
Yes, that would seem to be the logical stage we're at, as much as we know. I mean, it would be weird if they didn't. Essentially, it would all be over if they weren't given access to the data room.
Yeah. So talk us through the process. So soft bids come in, access to the data room, and at some time over the next few weeks, the firm bids will be put in for assessment by the Rain Group and the Glazer family.
Yes, and the bidders will have to show proof of financing as well, because you and I could bid, Ed, but we obviously don't have the money. So there has to be credibility behind any offers made. And no doubt we know the deadline of last Friday, and no doubt there'll be future deadlines where they have to provide certain information. So, and we don't know what that timetable is. No one's said.
Yes, it'll be interesting asking the Al Thani family whether they have proof of funds. What are they going to do? Whip out their app and show the Barclays current account?
Indeed. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and it's obviously therefore far more relevant for Ineos, although it's a 60 billion turnover business. The devil's in the detail here, isn't it? And as much as one can get from the briefings to the journalists, it sounds like this is an Ineos bid. Obviously, Ineos is entirely owned by Jim, and they've got the balance sheet to write a check of £4 or £5 billion, without a doubt. It's a very odd thing for a business to do, but when you're owned by one person, you can do that. So
well, him and the founders, it's a very complex web of companies in Ineos. There's the group company and then the subsidiaries in different parts of the petrochemical business and different countries and so on. So
yeah, and different subsidiaries have different ownership structures amongst themselves. I mean, UK is very good. You can trace ownership in the UK reasonably easily, but as soon as you go to most countries, you can't see the share register. You don't know who owns what. But yes, I mean, I think it's credible to say that INEOS could afford to do it. They're obviously being advised by Goldman's and who's the other advisor? Anyway,
JP Morgan.
JP Morgan, that's right. And obviously JP Morgan and Goldman's job partly will be to line up any external financing that they need, which obviously raises one of the major questions about the INEOS bid, which is, does it come with debt? Or does it come with debt, more importantly, that is on the club? Is it just replacing the current position with another unwelcome bunch of debt? The debt at the end of September was, the last figure, $650 million.
Yep.
And where's that? What's going to happen to that number if INEOS takes over?
Yeah, and that's unclear, of course. I mean, I have to say I didn't panic about that, assuming that the debt is taken on by INEOS. It's a fraction of a point on the leverage that they've already got.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. Of course, it would be very much against anything that Ratcliffe has said previously to leverage and dump it on the club. So it seems very, very unlikely, but not impossible.
Yeah, it does. And I think it connects with, I think we spoke in the summer, didn't we, on this pod about how you pay for the redevelopment of the stadium. And one of the big problems the Glazer family have is they don't have or they don't want to put in the money, and you can't really borrow much more against Manchester United because of that $650 million they've already got. And anyone coming in to buy the club knows that full well, and so they're going to have to not only buy the Glazers out, but they're also going to have to come up with another, make up the number, 500, 600, £1 billion over the next few years to pay for that. So you would therefore think it was very unlikely that you would just replicate the situation we have now of having £600 million, £500 million of debt on the club's balance sheet if you then have to go and do that stadium development thereafter.
Well, that's right. And the stadium, I mean, it really is a key part of this process, isn't it? Because a redevelopment, it might put a number on it, but it could be anywhere from 100 to hundreds of millions, depending on the scale. And then a brand new stadium is obviously going to be $1 billion plus, given the size that would be required. But a redevelopment wouldn't necessarily bring in any extra revenue. It's very hard to see a path towards lots of extra revenue there.
I think they would hope it would bring in some extra revenue because, well, first of all,
more seats,
the simple capacity, exactly right.
Yep.
And secondly, can they charge more for a higher quality corporate hospitality product, and can they have more boxes as well? I mean,
well, it's true.
I mean, the North. I remember when it was a PLC, club was a PLC, and they always said, "Look, they come down to London to meet fund managers like me," and the management would always say, "Look, guys, the northwest of England is not London. You can't expect." The Emirates didn't exist then, obviously, but you can't expect us to sell the level of hospitality that you would get if we had the same stadium in somewhere in North London. And that's true, but it's still a prosperous area, and I think they would expect to add some value from more corporate seats and more boxes and better boxes, more lavish and so on. And so maybe the Qataris could fly over and have a box under Ratcliffe's ownership. You never know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to an American style stadium.
But it won't pay for that. It will pay back over many years. It's not an immediate return. So.
Well, that's the other question. You see, if I was dispassionate about this, which obviously I'm not, and Old Trafford means a lot to all of us who've been to many hundred a game there, you would say that the better financial return would be to do what Spurs did, knock down the old stadium, take out a bond over a very, very long period of time and pay it back. And it's paying off for Spurs in terms of the extra revenue, clearly. And that would be probably the best investment rather than redeveloping Old Trafford. And you could also move it slightly away from where it is on land that United already own, be a much easier development, and so on and so on and so on. But
that's true. But that goes back to the point about the current debt. So the current debt is secured on all the assets of the club, all the player contracts. The assets are the brand, which is obviously exceptionally valuable, the player contracts, which are quite valuable, and the physical assets, of which the primary one is obviously the stadium. So you can't just go and borrow another £1 billion and say to your current bankers, don't worry, guys, there's plenty to go around. That security, it's like having it would be a second mortgage
on the same asset. Yeah.
On the same asset. So so it goes back to that. What you call the capital structure? What's the balance sheet look like after the club's been sold, if the club is sold? Yeah. So you need equity. You need new capital going in from the shareholders, and
and that's a very difficult situation to think about when you think about a third party, say, let's just say Elliott, putting in some equity, even in the form of debt or liquidity, in the form of debt, or buying some of the Glazers' shareholdings out, because that would still mean the Glazers had to fund effectively the new stadium development, and that's not going to happen when you've milked the cow for nearly 20 years.
Can I put some rough numbers on it?
Yeah.
You could take the view that let's say that there are two offers out there at the moment for about $4.5 billion, and so that number will include the current debt. So let's call it, very rough terms, about $4 billion of equity value the Qataris and Ineos have put on the club. With that evidence from a process run by Rain, the Glazers could go to someone like Elliott or someone else and say, look, guys, there's $4 billion of value here. We need, I'll make it up, $1 billion to partially buy out some of the siblings. So they go. Not entirely, but they get $1 billion in their pockets, which they'll be happy with. And we need another $1 billion for the stadium development. And that could all happen sort of at the Glazer family level, essentially. We'd never see it. The first thing the rest of the world would see would be a New York Stock Exchange announcement saying the other siblings have all sold this number of shares to Joel and Avi. And
Shame we're not in on that pillow talk, hey?
We'll never see how it's financed, and we'll never know anything. And the next thing you'll hear is, and they're putting in money to develop the stadium. So it could all happen behind the scenes, using the almost like the evidence that there's $4 billion of value there. I hope not.
Yeah, that's one path. There's the Glazer financing in some kind of way, without trying to provoke a riot or anything like that. I can imagine that not going down very well with a large proportion of the Manchester United supporter base.
It's got to be the worst outcome, hasn't it? It's absolutely the worst.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, to be fair, since the ESL debacle, the club, and I think you have to say that Joel Glazer is behind this, has engaged significantly more with
than they did,
supporters groups. I mean, particularly with Must, which I'm involved in, but also with the TRA, and that's good. And there'll be wins from that, things like relocating the execs in Stretford End, a variety of matchday stuff, which in Sterling, who's at Must, is the independent sports liaison officer, all the stuff he does with the club.
Yeah.
So that's good. And the club hierarchy have been good. But undeniably, the Glazer family are not wanted by the supporter base as long-term owners, and they aren't going to retire that debt that's already there, whatever they do behind the scenes in the US.
They can't afford to, I don't think.
They can't afford to, no. And they don't want to. And therefore, the sort of, if none of this was happening, we'd probably be talking about what we need to do to strengthen the squad, why we had to get Weghorst in the summer, in the winter, in the window just closed. And the fact that essentially the club doesn't have any cash. It's not going bust, but it's just really, really up against it. The overdraft, what's called the RCF, is drawn partially, and there's massive transfer debt that's been built up to other clubs. The club,
200 million, I think.
Indeed, that's right.
Counts,
yeah, that's right. And so the club is strapped, which is ridiculous. It's ridiculous that Manchester United is strapped for cash, and it's a lot of it's down to that debt. So I think the supporters would be extremely upset.
That's a good segue into talking about the current state of United's finances. So you touched on it a little bit there, a huge amount of money owed in transfers. That's obviously not due straight away. That's going to be over a number of years. It's how most European clubs operate. It's a very large sum. Presumably they'll be able to get some of that back by flogging Harry Maguire in the summer. Not a lot, but a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the flip side of the transfer debt, if you like, is the very poor record the club has got of making money from selling players.
Horrendous. Yeah.
I mean, City in their last accounts, and actually really weirdly in the previous year, I think it was 63 million profit they made on selling players. And I think United was 20 something.
Yeah.
And year before that was 8. Or we're talking
truly horrendous record.
Really, really poor. Given the number of poor signings we've made, and therefore the number of people who've had to be churned in the post-Fergie years, you think we well, it's not only buying badly, it's then selling
badly on top. It compounds the error. Yeah. And then in fact, City you mentioned, and Chelsea have made more than 500 million in the last 10 years, I think it is, from sales of squad players. It's like another income stream to add to broadcast, match day, and commercial.
Yeah, and from UEFA financial regulations, any profit you make is pure holy profit, pure profit you can then use on other things, if you see what I mean. So United, by not having, as you say, not having that income stream, also have to look at the new financial regulations. The making sure that your football expenditure is eventually has to be 70%.
70%. Yeah.
So,
I think I'm right in saying, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the way the profit and sustainability, as they're now called, regulations work is that you amortize your player purchases over the length of the contract, so let's say 5 years or 27 in the case of Chelsea, and then any sales that go immediately onto the books. In which case, so Chelsea are playing a game where they will have to sell every year in order to balance the books, but it gives them a bit of space and freedom to play that game. Yeah,
it does.
And they have a very good record of doing it. Yeah. And then like United's other commercial income, what room for growth is there? Because I look at it and TV is flat, although in the current economic environment, that was a win. Renewing the Premier League contract. The international rights may or may not go up. We'll see on broadcast, that is. And then commercials, United's performance has been flat, trending not very good for many, many years.
Yes, I mean, United would obviously, under Edward Wood, many bad things about him, but he was in charge of the organisation where they had this incredible innovation, which no one had done before, which was basically segment the brand, chop it and slice it and dice it. And I mean, the old PLC had the absolutely contrary idea. I remember them David Gill saying to me years ago, "Oh, you can't tarnish the brand. You can't spread it out too thinly. You have to have 5 or 6 key sponsors." And what United did was completely turn that on its head and have, as we all know, the famous pot noodle sponsor in. Once, and that was an innovation, but everyone's caught up with that now. And actually, the commercial growth has slowed right down over the last few years. The rate of growth, rather, slowed right down. There's not match days out of your hands. You've got the stadium as it is, which you've talked about already. This year is going to be a really good year. We've had so many home draws. We've gone a long way in. We're going a decent way in the cups, so that's going to be better. But that's fluctuates year by year depending on, on the vagaries of draws and so on. And TV, as you said, again, it's out of our hands. Getting in the Champions League would make a big difference, clearly, and looks. I'm not wanting to
looks good.
But it
looks
good at the moment. But yeah, fundamentally, there isn't a great deal of organic growth. It's one of the things that people like me who look at company valuations professionally think, why on earth would you pay even £4 billion for something for a company like this that isn't really growing very fast and is going to make
and the stock market has agreed with you, basically.
It has indeed. That's right. Yeah. The stock market was valuing it at sort of the same price that Chelsea was sold for many the last 2 years, essentially. And
Yes, well, without getting ahead of myself, I do wonder what will good happen to that price if the Glazers do not fulfill the sales process. It would surely sink back down to where it was.
Yeah, if you're a merger arbitrage hedge fund, which are the people who bet on takeovers happening or not happening, it's a game for people with real nerves of steel. But yeah, I mean that's the worst outcome.
Got a position here, Andy? No.
Yeah, no, certainly not.
And then, okay, so, I mean, there's less to talk about on the Qatari front because obviously it's a state-backed bid, even if we're supposed to believe it's not in a monarchy.
Yeah.
It all roads lead to the same place. Yeah. So
we know that the natural resources of Qatar are controlled by the royal family. We know that you only tap into those if you're connected to the royal family. I'm not objecting to the way they run their country. That's how they run their country. Who am I sitting in London to tell them to do differently? But yeah. So the money all comes from the same source eventually. I have no doubt they've got clever lawyers who can
can try and prove otherwise. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Ratcliffe and Ineos would have to do the same jiggery pokery and pretend that the subsidiary that this went into, which presume the same subsidiary that has other sporting assets, or in fact, it'd have to be a different one for UEFA, maybe under the same group, would have a different managing structure, which actually they do. So it would be a fairly easy process, I think. One of the things I'm curious about is when we saw the Chelsea bid, there were about 20 offers. Now, some of them were tire kickers and some of them were real, but we haven't seen that, we're led to believe, with United. And so is it just the case that it's a more expensive prize and so few people interested, or the PE market cooling, especially in the US with interest rates going up? What do you think's behind the sort of lack of interest?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a variety of factors. I think that Chelsea, given its location in southwest London, although obviously you have to solve the almost insolvable problem of the Chelsea Pitch Owners Association Limited, I believe it is, but you have to that relocation or redevelopment of Stamford Bridge thing. You can see that there's a golden egg in there somewhere, isn't there? There's something, you know.
I'm sure their neighbours on the King's Road won't mind them bulldozing a few houses. It'll be fine.
Well, I mean, the sites are running out, aren't they? Battersea Power Station's gone, Earls Court's gone. Hard to know, move it out to Oak Common or somewhere like that where the HST...
Clapham Common,
Clapham Common, But there's that potential there, isn't there, which I think attracted people, almost in a way that it's a slightly different point, but PSG, you know, Paris, just a draw of Paris as a location. But anyway, so why view Manchester United? Yes, partly the market interest rates have risen. Money is not free anymore, which it has been for many years. Partly just the scale of capital you need. I mean, it's a huge amount. Partly that United is already run on a very commercial basis. I mean, Abramovich didn't run Chelsea on a commercial basis; he ran it at a loss. But United's had professional managers in there trying to make a profit since it IPO'd in the 90s.
Right.
So,
and it's very difficult.
And it's very, very difficult. So, that EBITDA that they're guiding, EBITDA being a measure of profit, sorry for technical terms, that they're guiding to this year, I think it's 125 to 140 million. The club's never made more than 150 million in any year. So you've got an asset that's been run professionally for decades. I think everyone would agree it's probably, from a financial side, run quite well, putting aside the debt, the operational financial side. So it hasn't ever made more than 150 million quid a year. Well, there's a limit, isn't there? There's a limit to what any rational person would pay for that.
And competition between so many different parties in the football market means that it's very hard, as we've seen, for an owner to say cash out. So then you're looking at capital appreciation, and there needs to be some path to growth. And presuming, I don't know what you've heard, but we're hearing more noises about the regulator. Are people nervous about what the regulator might mean for potential growth of a football club like this?
I don't think so. My understanding is that United have been reasonably positive about the regulator. Obviously, what the ESL was trying to do really was calm down spending and stop people overstretching themselves. I mean, they had all sorts of terrible things about it as well, but that was the motivation, particularly behind the Glazers and Fenway, Liverpool being so in favour of it, and Spanish clubs hated the fact that that they were losing competitiveness to English clubs. So in some ways, regulation is good for people who want to make money out of it, because if you regulate to the point where you end up as sort of NFL light or something, everyone makes money. So it's hard to know where that fits into all this. Now, if you're a vanity buyer, or you've got vanity as part of your reasons for bidding, then I don't know. It's a slightly different equation, isn't it? Because to get the glory, you want to pump money in. I mean, that's PSG being the obvious example. So.
The devil really will be in the detail when it comes to the regulator, because there's a framework we've seen, the white paper, and Tracy Crouch has been out there sort of spinning in favour of it, but it's really hard to know which parts are the kind of structural pieces. So which markets you can play in, ESL, not ESL, and that's quite a hard one with UK company law, I'd say.
Yeah, but Parliament can legislate anything it wants, can't it?
That's right. Parliament is supreme, and it can. And then what is like kind of light touch stuff. So hey, you can't change the name of the club or the colours or the logo or kind of football community stuff.
You can't do what they did to Wimbledon. I mean, that's
right.
I know it's a long time ago, but that was a gross failure of football's regulatory structures, wasn't it? And it could theoretically, until this happens, it could happen again.
Could happen again, yeah. Well, we don't get what happens in US sports, which is clubs moving city.
Right. Yeah.
Ostensibly to take advantage of the only part of the US economy that absolutely loves socialism, which is cities paying for stadiums for billionaire owners. It's an amazing process.
Like the Glazers, in fact. I mean, they didn't move, but Tampa had their stadium partially
screwed out a stadium, yeah.
Toughly.
Well, as listeners will know, I now live in Seattle, and many years after the Supersonics basketball team left, people still hate Howard Schultz, the Starbucks founder, because he was the owner and he let it move. I hate him with a passion. And so, yeah, anyway, there's that. And then there's the kind of third bit, which is the kind of revenue piece. And Gary Neville and a few EFL club owners have been out there banging the drum for 25% of the TV deal, which of course the Premier League will never say yes to, even though they said yes to it in 1992, which is hilarious. And then I find myself conflicted about that because, of course, I'm a United fan. I want United to be successful, but money flowing down the leagues is healthy for the game overall. And the cliff edge of the Premier League causes just a horrendous impact on the Championship, where everyone's chasing the dream and no one can afford it. And the wages to turnover ratio is more than 100% at every club.
And the main way of passing money down the pyramid at the moment, which is parachute payments, is in itself, well, as an outsider, as somebody who probably isn't a supporter of a club that's going to get relegated again in my lifetime, it's happened once in my lifetime. But yeah, that seems a very perverse way, doesn't it, to basically dump three rich guys into this viper's nest of stretched finances, and then obviously those parachute payments go on for more than 1 year, so you actually end up with quite a few alligators in the pond who've got money, right, desperately trying to, and you've got people aspiring to come up, as you say, and overstretching themselves. There's got to be a better way of doing it. I think my personal view has always been that you need a bigger distribution, and the Premier League could easily give more. It could. I mean, obviously, if it was giving 75% of its revenues, then that would change its relative competitiveness with Spain and France and Italy and Germany. But no one's suggesting that. So
no, and we'll see where the negotiations go on that, because at the moment, as I understand it, there are no negotiations.
No, not. I remember the Premier League came up with some proposals. A year ago, 2 years ago.
Yes, that's right.
Which were sort of Premier League land grab at the same time.
Yes,
with cash in one hand, control
and power in the other. Yeah. So I mean, we'll say, I don't know whether this is having a cooling effect, but then the other thing is the lack of interest from other potential parties. I think I was having a chat with a friend this morning, actually, about why there's been no interest from, say, China, where there are more than enough billionaires who've got more than enough billions sitting in their back pockets that need something to do to bid. But of course, the government has pulled back from interest in sport, and particularly football, and that it's almost like a perfect storm of world economic stuff, geopolitics, and Chinese geopolitics at the moment, like creating a lack of interest.
Well, if you look at where free spending billionaires are, you've mentioned China, where you would not be allowed to do this without the approval of the Chinese Communist Party, and they're obviously, well, who knows what they're going to say, but the fact there aren't any Chinese bidders probably suggests that there aren't Chinese bidders for other sports assets, as you say, at the moment, which is probably the words come down from Xi that you can't do that. You've got the ex Soviet Union states, whether it's Russia or Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan and so on, they are politically beyond the pale. I think if
out the game right now,
if an Abramovich type character turned up, or Usmanov or whatever, that wouldn't fly, would it? So you got the Middle East. The Saudis have made their play. There's always talk about the Saudi bids, but I think that seems unlikely. The missing piece for me are the American private equity guys who did have obviously bought Chelsea and there were other similar people to Bravery His consortium who were interested in Chelsea. Why haven't they come in? Which I think goes back to what I was saying about they see an opportunity, a development opportunity at Chelsea, whether it's physical development or just like this should be. London can support 2 or 3 massive clubs, and Chelsea is a sort of, well, it's not that hidden jewel. It's won the Champions League and the league, and goodness knows what. But there's potential there in a way that
Yeah.
there probably isn't at United. So
And then the other part of the US market would be the tech bros, and of course the tech bros have all seen their
they have.
their kind of assets fall in value,
Yeah.
and so whether you're, I don't know, a $30 billion tech bro, a middle ranked tech bro, and you're down to 10. Well, it starts to get a bit squeaky bum time when you've only got 10 million in assets buying a football club.
Going back to what you said before about how you make money owning a football club, the Glazers have got the profitability of United up to this 120 to 140 million EBITDA a year. I think the PLC, the best year they ever had was 75 million.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and they've owned the club for 18 years. In other words, it's quite hard to drive to profitability, even when you're giving it your very best shot and you're aiming for profitability as your outcome. Obviously, a lot of clubs don't try to make money there if they're backed by a benefactor. So, how are you going to make money by buying Manchester United for £4 billion or £5 billion? How can you double your money? Can you double the profitability and sell it at the same valuation?
That's
again?
right.
Or,
Well, you'll have a better clue than me on what private equity needs as a return. In VC land, where I am, you want your fund to perform at about 3x the total fund in order to take your fees and your cut of the carry and return something to your LPs to make up for the opportunity cost of investing your fund, not elsewhere.
LPs,
right? So,
being limited partners. Ed,
limited partners.
For those who
jargon.
don't know. For those who don't know. Yeah. The investors. Yeah.
The investors, right? So 3x in VC land, which is super risky. Manchester United, less risky, probably don't want the 3x return, but still, it is a hard path, isn't it? And that's probably why we don't have an auction right at the moment, despite the Glazer family doing their very best to get the Qataris to bid against themselves, I think, by putting a lot of stuff in the papers at the moment. Yeah. So I mean, without speculating, we've got another few weeks of due diligence, hard bids, and then a decision will need to be made.
Yes, and I think there's a whole element of that decision-making process that we have no idea about, which is the dynamic between the different members of the Glazer family. And I suppose just like any group of people who collectively own an asset, some people are keener to hang on, some people are keen to sell, some people, they'll have different expectations of not just the price they can get, what the price they should get now is, but what the price they might be able to get in 3 or 4 years' time. You could paint it this way, couldn't you? Oh my goodness, we got Erik ten Hag. He looks like the real deal. The team is actually probably now one of the best in Europe, and that's not a statement you could have made at any time in the last 5 years. Why on earth are we selling now when we could be doing it with a Champions League trophy in the cabinet in 18 months' time, or a league title? This is completely wrong. This is totally the wrong moment to sell. So, yeah,
you could spin it like that. Yep. So, yeah, well, we'll see how this plays out. If we get down to brass tacks and there's more stuff, maybe we'll have you on a quick occasion again.
One thing we should mention, just to finish off, is how bidders relate to fans. And here I'm reasonably optimistic. Yeah. And here I'm talking about the Qataris or Ineos, but not the Elliott Glazer internal stuff. But if there's a new bidder, I mean, they've obviously paid lip service in their press releases to fan-centric and fans at the heart of it and all the rest of it. And obviously from wearing my must hat, that's critical because we're here to represent the supporters. But I do think that either of those bidders, neither of them wants a situation where Rashford bangs in a goal at Old Trafford and after the cheering, the next thing you hear is, we want X out. Yeah. If you're buying it for a big amount of money, partially for glory, whether it's your hometown club if you're Jim Ratcliffe, or you just want the glory of owning Manchester United if you're not from Manchester, then you want glory, don't you? You want people to like you, respect you, be happy to have you there. And I think initially that obviously, if that debt is wiped or the debt is put onto Ineos, then there will be goodwill, of course there will, and it will be somebody who's not the Glazers, but they have got to follow through on engaging with the supporters and putting this.
I fully agree. Yeah.
And I think they will. I think there's a good chance.
They will. I mean, I think from Ratcliffe's point of view, it's obviously an emotional investment. I mean, he is a cold-hearted business person. I think everyone says that about him, and he's a value investor. which means he won't be suddenly doubling the bid if he doesn't think that makes sense. But he's after Manchester United for a particular reason. He's 70 years old. There's a legacy to be left here. And the Qataris, yes. Well, look at what they've done with Paris. You can talk about the kind of on the field stuff and financial shenanigans and skewing the transfer market, but actually what they've done with Paris and centered it around Paris, and it apes to some extent what UAE had done with Manchester City and Abu Dhabi with City, or no, strictly speaking, not Abu Dhabi, of course, the investment vehicle, I should say, before the lawyers call, is center it around Manchester, make a lot of other quote unquote heavy air quotes here, folks, investments around Manchester, and they've done, you would say, a very fan-centric model, and probably that would be the case too. Now, there's a different price to pay with each of these bids. I would, from a personal point of view, suggest a very heavy price to pay if it's Qatar, a different ethical price to pay if it's Ratcliffe, obviously with a petrochemical business. It depends how much you care about the climate.
No, but I think we have to be realistic. There aren't wonderful, benevolent, charitable owners willing to write a check of this size.
Sadly, no.
If I'm that person, but I don't have the money. You're that person, Ed, but you don't have the money either. Even if we put our resources together, we don't have the money. Even if everyone who listens to this pod put their money together, we don't. That doesn't mean actually we can't aspire to have some.
Folks, I'll give you my PayPal address. You send in the cash, and I promise I'll spend it in the right way. I would like to think
that actually any owner would possibly look at continuing something like the fan share scheme that United have been talking to us about, because there is. It may be that Ineos would even keep the shares listed. They've talked about only buying out the Glazers' stake and not buying 100%. And
well, of course, at any point you can buy the listed shares. They've just never come with any power or say.
So some proper shares and proper voting power.
Yeah. I think I'm right in saying before we go that in the Articles of Association, those B shares will convert to A shares when the sale happens, right? So each share gets the same amount of voting rights.
Yes, right? That's right. So he would be buying 67% of the club, which is enough, essentially,
for control.
Control. Yeah.
All right, very good. If you want the counterpart to this, I'll do a series of Takeover related ones. I also spoken to Nicholas McGeehan from Fair Square about the ethics of potential Qatari and or Ineos bids. And you can listen to that one. Thank you very much, Andy, for joining.
Absolute pleasure.
Clarified some things. Come on, you Reds, for Sunday's final. This might go out after Sunday, so congratulations, you Reds, for winning. And we'll speak to you all soon.
Thanks, Ed. Cheers.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.